I'm Mike Knopfwood, the 28-year-old businessman. I work for a pretty big and famous company in my hometown. I'm part of the sales team, and there's a business drinking party almost every night. The clients seem to really like the place I chose for the gathering, so I think it was successful. I felt a sigh of relief. My boss is whispering something to our CO. Looks like he's planning for the next place. Probably they're going to a fancy place with attractive ladies along with our client CEO. I guess these regular employees are calling it quits here. We held taxes for the harems to send them off. Our tipsy CEOs seem to be in high spirits. We made sure nothing was left behind with seniors, and then us regular employees dispersed. My colleagues were heading off to a bar, but I'm not much of a drinker. Despite the invite, I declined and decided to head home early. I wanted to enjoy my only hobby, gaming, when I got home. As I was excitedly heading home, I heard a dispute in a side alley off the main street. Normally I ignore it, but I stopped in my tracks when I heard a young woman's voice. Squinting into the dark alley, I could see a girl about college-aged and a man about my age arguing about something. The man seemed to be forcing the girl, and she was clearly uncomfortable. "Hey, stop that." She tried to keep her voice down, but it was clear she was rejecting him. The man was holding her arm, seemingly trying to forcefully take her somewhere. The girl appeared to be about the same age as my younger sister. "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be forcing her like that," I called out quietly towards the back of the alley. The man turned around and glared at me. From just one glance, I could tell he was wearing a well-tailored suit. His tie is designer-made. His leather shoes are nicely polished. He seems like a rich kid. "Back off. You're out of your league, man." Quite a mouth on him for a privileged kid. Maybe he's a rich Brad gone bad. I cynically stepped into the alley. The humidity instantly rises above the level of the main street. It's probably damp hair from the air conditioners attached to both sides of the buildings, but she seems uncomfortable, and you're acting like a thug, so I can't just ignore this. While saying that, I nonchalantly grab his hand, shielding the girl behind me. Talking circles around people is something I'm good at. "Hey, Ginny, do you know this guy?" The man yells as he tries to violently grab the shoulder of the girl behind me. I shield her, making sure his hand doesn't reach her. He clicks his tongue and then attacked with a pretty heavy punch. I absolutely hate violence. I was blown to the wall of the building, hitting my back hard. I taste iron in my mouth. The man looks down at me, now slumped against the building wall. There's a vulgar grin on his face. These kinds of guys never stop at one punch. He's the type who gets excited by the violence he inflicts. Just as I try to escape, a kick to my stomach makes me groan. See, just as I thought, I nearly laugh at how well I've rated him. Just as the man clenches his fist again, the girl thrusts her smartphone screen in his face. "If you don't stop, I'm calling the police. Are you planning to make your dad clean up the mess again?" She says this with a voice so cold, it's like she's mocking him. Maybe he didn't believe she'd actually call the police, because his fist clenches tighter. Without hesitation, she starts using her smartphone. From the speakerphone, you can hear the voice of a police officer answering a 911 call. He keeps asking, "What's your emergency?" The man lowers the fist he'd raised and clicks his tongue. "Don't run, Jenny." The man says this and runs off down the alley. She ends the call only after making sure he's gone. "We should move before the police arrive." "You don't want any more trouble, right?" She grabs my arm to help me up, and then lends me her shoulder as I wobble. Her side profile is a real beauty, but with a hint of darkness, a pure yet mysterious beauty. By the time we reach a bench in a park, Away from the alley, we're both sweating. She made me sit on the bench and buys a couple of bottles of water from a vending machine. She gave me one and uses the other to dampen her handkerchief and gently wipes my face. It burns my mouth with the water she gave me, but I can still taste iron. It looks like I've cut the inside of my mouth quite a bit. We need to get you to a hospital. You're bleeding. She says this with a worried look while holding the cold handkerchief to my wounds. I'm fine. It's not as painful as it looks. Are you hurt anywhere? In my words, she opens her eyes wide in surprise, then tilting her head slightly, she looks at me in puzzlement. Did I say something strange? Just as I was about to open my mouth again, her slender hand moved swiftly. Before I knew it, my suit jacket was whisked away. Excuse me, suddenly stripped of my jacket, I was flustered. I'll get it cleaned and return it. I'm sorry, but can you please provide your contact details? She said this in a polite but firm tone. She quickly tossed over items that were in the pocket. When she found a business card holder in an inner pocket, she smiled. I'll take a business card if you don't mind. Pardon me. She promptly pulled out a card, and she tossed it over to me. She took the business card, pausing for a moment. I'll be in touch. A call from a college girl must be a nightmare. Give me your number. It seemed like I had run into a charming thief. As I told her my number, she repeated it without taking a note. She then introduced herself as Guinea Garcia. Just as I was about to say that the cleaning wasn't necessary, my phone started ringing. The caller ID prominently displayed my boss's name. The message was urgent. The CEO of a client company was drunk, and I was needed for help. Sorry, I got some work to do. I left her in the park as I rushed off. It was regrettable, but I had no choice. She watched me silently from within the park until I hailed a taxi and got in. A week later, I received a call from the charming thief during my lunch break. She must have timed it to catch me on my break. I didn't recognize the number, but I had a hunch it might be her. The cleaning is done. So when can we meet? She asked. I told her I would be free after work tomorrow. I'll send you the meeting place via text, and she hung up the call. The meeting place she texted was a restaurant I'm not familiar with. Her message sighed as a token of my appreciation. Let's have a meal. It's a restaurant picked by a college student, so it probably won't be anything too fancy. I prepared a bit of extra cash in my wallet and headed to the designated restaurant the next day. And now I'm scared. The restaurant is not for students, and I was led to a private room hidden behind a concealed door. Frozen in place, I was sitting rigidly when she arrived a little late. I'm sorry for making you wait, she apologized, bowing her head. I barely managed to respond with a weak, it's fine. She sat down on the pulled-out chair like usual and ordered the chef's recommended course. Dishes that I've never tasted before appeared, delighting both my eyes and palate. Like magic, drinks were refilled at just the right timing, and the friendly waiter helped to ease my tension. The final dessert was served in front of me, and cheese was placed before her. Being a lover of sweet things, it was the best cake I've ever had in my life. You're not having the cake? I don't like sweets, she admitted, her face darkening a bit. I used to be fine with it, she added with a smile. Taste changes, we grow, and not every girl in the world loves cake. I simply responded, shrugging it off at the time. During the meal, we had all sorts of conversations. The guy who had bothered her turned out to be her fiancé, Jenny. She talked about marrying right after graduating from college, but she didn't seem happy about it. I could easily tell something was going on. Aren't you too young to be getting married already? I blurted out. Jenny merely smiled awkwardly in response to my question, not saying a word. She seemed resigned, and her smile could also be interpreted as a knowing smirk. In just 2.5 hours, I found myself wanting to know more about her. When I reached for my card to tackle the bill I was dreading, I was told it had already been paid. "It's on me as you helped me," she said with a smile, handing me my freshly cleaned jacket. As we left the restaurant, she quickly said goodbye and began to leave. "Wait, I have a proposal," I blurted out, desperately wanting to keep her from leaving. Upon being called, Christine slowly turned around. The sight of her looking straight at me was breathtakingly beautiful. "If you get married soon, let's do the things you won't be able to do once you're married," I said. She looked surprised at my words, her eyes widening. It was a bold proposal, but it was all I could think of. Jenny, who is set to marry that guy right after graduation, and clearly it wasn't a marriage she wanted, so I thought, why not enjoy her freedom until she gets married? I wanted to see her smiling, preferably by my side. "What a proposal," she said, her voice filled with a hint of disbelief. Suddenly, I felt embarrassed. When I timidly asked, "So is it a no-go?" Ginny shook her head. "Where are you taking me for our fun day out?" she asked with excitement. I was relieved to see her anticipation. "Well, let's start planning then," I said, and she nodded in agreement. And just like that, she smoothly linked her arm with mine. Thus began our little game of playing lovers. From that day, Jenny and I went on many dates in various places. There was no rule as to who should ask, but it was always me inviting and her accepting. There were a lot of things I learned from our numerous dates. She was more of a sheltered lady than I had imagined. She was too excited with the aquarium and being childish as she wanted to touch penguins. At the zoo, she fussed about wanting to take home a baby lion. During a horse riding, Jenny, an experienced rider, left me behind and ran into the forest. I remember feeling awkward when she showed up in a summer dress for the county fair. I was forced to buy a cotton candy that was 3 times the size of her face, but she remembered that she hated sweet things, which made me burst into laughter. Her persona was completely different from when we first met, and I was constantly surprised. That day, we went to a solo exhibition by a female woodcarver who specializes in animal carvings. She enjoyed sitting on a life-sized orangutan carving and playing with the kids. I found the scene somewhat heartwarming and watched while leaning against the wall. "Oh, teacher, hello." Suddenly I turned toward the sound. There was a familiar-faced boy grinning at me. "Hey, are you here with your family?" I noticed a girl holding his hand. He nodded with a hearty smile. "You're a teacher," out of nowhere, Jenny, who had returned, asked with curiosity. "Oh, are you the teacher's girlfriend?" "He's a boxing teacher," the boy responded clearly to Ginny's question. "In fact, I'm good at boxing, and I teach grade school kids at the gym run by an old college." Jenny stared at me in surprise, learning this new side of me she wasn't aware of. It was quite embarrassing being stared at so intently. Ginny watched the boy energetically say goodbye and run back to his parents. "You could have hid back, but you didn't," she murmured to herself. I knew she was talking about the time when we first met. "Why didn't you get back?" she asked, suddenly serious. Taken aback, I looked at Rachel. Her face was very serious. "I just don't like hitting people," I confessed. It may have sounded contradictory, but that was how I truly felt. I knew the pain of hitting someone and being hit. That's why I didn't like hitting people. I think this hesitation was the reason I was always the runner-up. During my school days, I was a runner-up in every competition. I could never fully commit to winning. Every time I came in second place, I felt sorry for my family who was cheering for me. Would you say the same thing even when you absolutely need to hit back? She asked in a cold voice, reminding me of when we first met. I felt a chasm between Jenny and me unbridgeable, as if we were standing on opposite cliffs overlooking a deep valley. I couldn't answer her question. Ever since our date at the art show, I had lost contact with Jenny. A week had passed. There was no response to my calls or emails. She used to pick up on the first ring. I was worried that something might have happened. Perhaps I had been written off because I couldn't answer a question. At the time, I was anxious to see her again. Just as I was about to try to contact her again, a colleague called out to me. He delivered a message that the director wanted me in his office. I hadn't made any mistakes at work. I put on the jacket I had taken off and knocked on the door to the boss's office. I was told in a low voice to come in. The boss's office, where the boss and the director and the CEO of the client company and one more person, the man who had been bothering Jenny, was sitting back on the sofa. "I'm disappointed in you trying to steal my nephew's fiancée," said the boss. So, the man who was bothering Jenny was the boss's nephew. The client company CEO also looked stern. As I stood there dumbfounded, the boss explained, Jenny was the daughter of a client company CEO and the boss's nephew's fiancée. He emphasized that their marriage was necessary to strengthen the partnership. It seems like they were insisting on a marriage to expand their companies. I was taken aback, wondering what they were talking about. So in short, the CEO's nephew desperately wants her, and he got the company involved, right? The truth just slipped out of my mouth. I felt the temperature in the CEO's office rise dramatically. The CEO of our client company was a person of no great reputation. I heard that originally the current CEO's brother was the CEO, but he was kicked out and the current CEO took his seat. He had mistresses here and there and ran the company recklessly, or so the rumours went. That's enough. I want you to quit the company. We can't afford to keep a thief cat in the company. I'm disgusted by the CEO's ridiculous comment. Next to that CEO, the CEO of the client company is nodding deeply. He says he can't do business with a company where thief cats are present. Personal life and work are separate matters. Annoyed at the nephew grinning at me, I say to the boss, I don't want to give up on myself who has been working hard till now here. I thought this is the time to become desperate. I thought I'm fed up with giving up on Guinea and my job. I'm not interested in your opinion. This is my company, and I don't need you. The CEO points to the exit door and tells me to leave. At that moment, the door he pointed at is opened without a knock. What the hell? We're having an important conversation. The CEO immediately yells at the person who opened the door. However, the next moment, everyone in the CEO's office was stunned and couldn't move. It's been a while, Uncle. My father sends his regards, Jenny said to the CEO without a smile. The boss's nephew, my fiancé, is stunned. Was it you, Uncle, who was secretly sniffing around me, or was it my fiancé? It wasn't until Jenny told me that I realized. The CEOs found out about Jenny and my relationship because someone was sniffing around us. Probably someone in this room hired a detective and investigated, and I was caught. You're also to blame, meeting secretly with Mike. It's irresponsible behaviour while engaged. Guinea snorts at the CEO's words. It was clear that she was looking down on everyone except me. The CEO of the client company warns Jenny, don't meddle. Guinea looks at me and smiles a little. I'll handle this. When Jenny declared that to me, she threw a bundle of documents at the client company's CEO. You're fired, CEO Williams. Jenny said to CEO Williams with cold, icy eyes. CEO Williams, flustered, flips through the documents thrown at him. With each page he turns, his face turns paler. My brother is the CEO from today, Ginny informs her fiancé. Incredible. Ginny conspired with a real brother and took over their father's company, investing in her father's company from her company and gradually buying up shares behind. We'll take back my father's company. Ginny glanced at her fiancé, who was totally in shock, and thrust documents at him too. The words compensation were written. I'll claim damages for all the mental distress you've caused, Ginny informs her fiancé. Then her gaze shifted to our company's CEO. He flinches slightly. Mr. Mike, I will poach you for our company. Brace yourself. I will bring down this place too, Jenny says, her mouth the only part of her that's smiling. Her eyes are not. Is this your idea of revenge? Hearing CEO Williams's squeezing voice, a big smile appeared on Jenny's face. If you compare it with what you've done to my family, it's nothing. The real hell starts now. In truth, Jenny was CEO Williams's daughter, but his niece. Her biological father was the CEO who was ousted by Williams. Jenny's father, having lost control of the company, died from a combination of stress and overwork. Seemingly her mother, who had been part of a loving couple, died of illness not long after. Only Jenny and her brother were left. Jenny was taken in by CEO Williams, and her brother was put into a facility. It's likely CEO Williams adopted Jenny because he thought she could be a useful pawn in the future. He probably never imagined that she would turn on him. Jenny had been patiently waiting for a moment of revenge. As CEO Williams collapses in defeat, Ginny looks at him once, then extends a hand to me. Welcome to our company, Mr. Mike. Just as she had declared, Jenny set out to destroy the company. Where I had been working, the employees tremble at the sight of her relentless advance with no hesitation or doubt. I started working as a secretary to the CEO at Ginny's company. The CEO is Jenny's real brother, Mr. James. He's the same age as me. The new job was tough in many ways, but somehow I managed. The company seemed to be changing into a more pleasant workplace, freed from dictatorship. I think the brighter expressions of the employees are proof of that. I would love to say everything is going well, but there's one thing that worries me. Jenny has been avoiding me. Ever since the incident in the CEO's office, she has been actively ignoring me. Even when we pass in the hallway, she just acts as if I don't exist. Just when I'm trying to find a way to talk to her, CEO James shows up. Do you know what a savannah cat is, Mike? Confused by the unrelated topic, I tilt my head. A savannah cat is a breed of cat born from the crossbreeding of a serval cat and a domestic cat. It's about the size of a dog. Depending on the breed, it is necessary to register with the local government to keep one. That large, mountain lion-like cat, right? They're rare in Japan. I reply. Mr. James then asks me to somehow arrange for a savannah kitten. As the CEO's secretary, it's not unusual to be rallied upon for personal matters as well as work. James, being the same age as me, often makes unusual requests. I thought it would cheer Kado up. She hasn't been her usual self lately, he says with a look of concern. Indeed, if I showed Jenny who demanded to keep a baby lion, a savannah cat, she'd be ecstatic. Sure thing, Mr. James. I'm pretty indulgent towards Ginny. Understood. I'll look into it right away and prepare a cake that she would like. It's her birthday soon. When I heard cake, I was surprised. Chelsea is supposed to dislike sweets. Mr. James should know that Ginny doesn't like sweets and can't eat them right. But a cake on my words, Mr. James seemed taken aback and sat down on the spot, scratching his head. I was taken aback by his sudden strange behaviour. Holding his head, Mr. James muttered, "That girl, what a fool." Apparently, when Jenny was little, she loved cakes. When her family got together for her birthdays, she would beg her father for various types of cakes. Even when the company was taken over, her father would still buy her a cake. Then, the day after Guinea's birthday, her father collapsed and never came back. Guinea believes it's all her fault. Mr. James told me that she thinks if she endures her favourite, her father will come to see her. Mr. James never expected that even now, as a college student, she would still hold on to that wish, to take back the company, to crush the trading company that drove her father to ruin. Jenny, who coldly gets everything done, is still a young girl who just wants to see her father. When I think about how much she's sacrificed to regain happiness, I feel like tears will overflow. I promised Mr. James about the Savannah cat and pleaded with him to tell me where Jenny was. I just want to talk to her. I drove to the place Mr. James told me. The personal exhibition we went to together is on its final day, and Jenny is said to be there. In the exhibition room, filled with the excited voices of children, I find Chelsea lost in thought. She was staring at a family looking at a wooden bear, seemingly enjoying themselves. Her profile looks expressionless, yet it also seems like she could burst into tears any moment. Found her. I gently whispered and gripped her hand so she couldn't run away. Jenny, who looked back in surprise, had noticeably lost weight since I last saw her. "Why are you avoiding me?" She shudders at my question. I stopped her from trying to run away by tightly gripping her hand. With a resigned look, she relaxed and said in a small voice, "Because you hate hitting, don't you?" Guinea continued in a small voice, thinking I despised her because I hate hitting. Her voice was shaking slightly. I hate and abhor hitting, but it depends on the time and place. I've changed my mind a bit. I spoke to Jenny as gently as possible. If it's for you, I'm sure I can handle it. Upon hearing my words, Guinea started shedding tears. She told me she feels terrible for affecting innocent employees' families by taking over companies, but she always acted tough to show that the person she resents is herself. She says she's prepared to carry all the blame and live her life. "Is there anything I can do for you?" I gently asked the crying girl. Then, in a small voice, she replied, "Stay by me like my dad. Don't disappear. Always be by my side." I wanted to hold her right away, but I restrained myself. Instead, I put a lot of strength into the hand we were holding. "Understood. I'll always be by your side, Jenny. Can you smile at me every day?" "And my question," Jenny cried and nodded many times. While watching her tears, I made a promise to myself. I will never make her cry again after today. I'd even import a Savannah cat if it's for her. Surely, she'll hug the big cat and show me a full-faced smile. The more, the merrier when it comes to family, right? As I muttered this, looking at families around us, Guinea's face turned beet red. Isn't it a bit early for that? Not at all, I think, about our way home from the art exhibition. I will buy one at a jewellery shop on the way. I was thinking about this, looking at Jenny's blushing face. Who would have thought that our meeting that day would lead to this? I had no idea back then. Now, I'm grateful to God for our encounter that day.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.